So welcome to everybody. We had our prayer and are good to go. Thank you for the reminder, Brianne, on the recording. So I do have a quick spiritual thought for us, and hopefully that's helpful. If anybody has any other good news to share, they're welcome to share it. I always like at the end of the Book of Mormon where Moroni and Mormon kind of correspond back and forth, and we get to capture that and get to know that from what we have in Moroni chapter 7. And I think that I love the fact that they talk about gifts and works and the things that we can do with that. In chapter 7, verse 6, we're going to start there. And it goes to say, "For behold, God hath said, a man being evil cannot do that which is good. For if he offereth a gift or prayeth unto God, except he do it with real intent, it profiteth him nothing." We're often told about how we might have to make sure that our gifts are genuine and our prayers are genuine. And so he goes on and says, "For behold, it is not counted unto him for righteousness." And of course, him is the same as her. We have both. "For behold, if a man being evil giveth a gift, he doeth it grudgingly. Wherefore it is counted unto him the same as if he had retained the gift. Wherefore he is counted evil before God. And likewise, it is counted evil unto a man, if he shall pray, and not with real intent of heart, and it profiteth him nothing, for God receiveth none such. For behold, a bitter fountain cannot bring forth good water, neither can a good fountain bring forth bitter water. Wherefore, a man being the servant of the devil cannot follow Christ, and if he follow Christ, he cannot be a servant of the devil. Wherefore, all things that are good cometh of God, and that which is evil cometh from the devil. For behold, the devil is an enemy unto God, and fighteth against him continually, and inviteth and enticeth to sin, and do that which is evil continually." The last verse. "But behold, that which is of God inviteth and enticeth to do good continually. Wherefore everything which inviteth and enticeth to do good, and to love God and to serve him, is inspired of God." So I think when I read those scriptures, well, first of all, I'll give my opinion last. What do you guys think when you hear that scripture in Moroni? What comes to mind?
Brother Bonnie, was that only verse 6?
No, I went on all the way through verse 14, I believe. So any response, your thoughts on that? What you guys think? Opinions?
I would say that it has to do with our intent of heart. We need to do it willingly. I guess it has to do with your intent. And I like the first part of the prayer. Do it without expecting anything in return.
Okay. Okay. Good, James. Thank you. All right. Other thoughts? There's a lot in those verses, so. I think that what I look at, I think that scripture and that set of scriptures talk about being genuine. I think Mormon and Moroni are teaching us that it's important to be genuine. I think that we've got lots of places in the scriptures that teach us that, but things like give a gift the right way, the bitter fountain and the good fountain. And I think that's more us. A person that's good is going to bring forth good gifts, and we're being encouraged to be good and to love and to share and to do those things that we should. And so I think the key there is our intent, as James mentioned, is what's looked at. And it's not just what our intent is, but what do we do? So if we're saying, hey, I'd like to change who I am, maybe we only partially give a gift begrudgingly, and we still maybe begrudge a little, and then maybe we get better over time, and then maybe we get to where we're like that pure fountain, where eventually it's just all good, because it's a little tough to make things completely black and white. Sometimes we as human beings aren't that way. We're often, you know, a little bit on the gray side. So I think if we're heading in the right direction, whether that be toward black or white, whatever is appropriate, I think that also helps with our intent. But I think it's important to give good gifts, to be genuine in our intent, and I think Moroni teaches us that. And maybe you can take a look at that Moroni chapter 7 in its entirety and get a little bit more thoughts on that. So hopefully that's helpful for everybody. Tonight we are talking about recruiting and hiring. So how many of you in our group tonight have done pardon that expression, that's bad grammar, do or perform some sort of hiring in your positions or have done so in your careers? Who's the crowd that's done that? Okay, I've got Brianne with a hand up. Derek, I think you're there, but not quite live. Derek, we know you're there because we see your little ones there.
Yeah, I've done some hiring in the past.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Sarah, James, Hans?
I've done a little bit, but nothing structured.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let me ask you this. From your reading, I'll ask a couple of questions here. Why in today's world is hiring so important? Now, it's always been important, but why now is it so important?
I think there's a few reasons. One, the cost, for one, of training a new employee. You don't want to have a bad apple that you're just going to have to go back to the tree and pick another one. Okay. Another is culture is huge. And again, on a cultural level, it's important. And I agree with Derek too, that unemployment is so high that it's important to have the right candidates and to sift through those. Anyways, those are my thoughts.
Okay, good, Brianne, thanks. Others, why today's world important? Yeah, hiring is so important.
I was going to share, but Brianne said what I was thinking. So
okay,
just going to echo that the cost to hire is so much more. Yeah,
yeah. Sarah made a comment. Derek made a comment. Unemployment, the employment. Now maybe I'm looking for Derek. I'm not quite sure I'm clear. Are you meaning that because everybody is employed, that rate is high? So maybe clarify for me there. Sarah says the cost of losing an employee is high, and then Derek, all we need to do is share. After all, Zion's around the corner. I like that one. That's a good one. All right. And Derek's also mentioning lost profits and lost talent. Okay, all those are very good points. Excellent stuff. Now, I think a couple of things, I guess from my perspective, it is, some of you remember hiring or just life back in the 90s, 2000s, early 2005, etc. When the economy was great, we had our difficulties in hiring because people were all employed. The economy crashed in 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever it was. We had more people available, but since 2010, 9, 10, it's been pretty much everybody that wants a job has a job, and those folks that have jobs are keeping them. Companies are trying to keep them. So hiring is both challenging now because you don't have as many people to choose from, and you have to entice people away from where they're at. So there's a lot of things that we have to do to try to make life better. So it's a tough gig to hire good people right now, and has been for quite a few years. Do any of the companies you guys work for, or anybody you know, have difficulty hiring people that are the high caliber that you need, I guess, if you will? Any thoughts on that one?
I work for a company that handles 401ks and FSAs and HSAs. And so level of insurance knowledge, it's very specific, as well as licensing. And so it takes a lot to train somebody.
Okay.
And it's really hard to get, and we have a lot of people that are getting older and moving out of the workforce. And to get that kind of level of experience, or even wanting that level of experience, is really difficult. Actually, right now is what we're seeing, because it's so, when you have a specific job area, or a specific industry, I should say, that's also adds to the difficulty, I think.
Okay. All right. I'm trying to hang on. I like your STP, Derek. Same 10 people. It tends to be the case. Yeah, it does tend to be that. There tends to be that, and that goes to Brianna's comment as well. Other thoughts on this concept of hiring and where we are, and et cetera?
I would agree with Brianne. Just today, the company that I work for, I quit, went to a part-time status back in March, and we hired my replacement, and I was part of that. The first one didn't work out well. She was younger, didn't follow through with what she said. So
okay.
The person who replaced her knew that we were very upfront and told her this would be a very, very steep learning curve, just because of very specific knowledge that she didn't have coming in. And I was there today and working with her, and she was almost in tears. She said, I know when I came into this, you guys told me it would be a steep learning curve, and it continues to be. And she said, I just got to keep reminding myself of that on hard days. And so I helped her through a few issues, and it's just specific knowledge that she's lacking, and we didn't have any candidates with that knowledge when we were interviewing for that position. The first round, we asked for anyone who was available, and we had 3 people. 3 people. I mean, that's not a whole lot.
No. And by the way, I think you're lucky to have 3. Lots of times you've got 1 nowadays.
Wow. So anyways, just to continue that story, really cool for her. She was almost in tears, but she was working through temp agency. The temp agency came in today and gave her a little plaque, Employee of the Month type thing with their company. So it's really, good thing for her, but it's a small candidate pool, I've got to say.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts on what you see hiring doing in your companies, or other observations here?
I think Brianne hit the nail on the head there, because I've been looking at things like just all these from farmers, like because I deal with a lot of farmers and agriculture, and I've dealt with truckers in the past, and all these people are getting older, and there are going to be shortages of these different people, because at the rate that they're going to be retiring, there's not going to be enough people to replace them. And these are essential jobs that we as a modern society rely upon in order to keep the cities and services that we've come to depend on over the decades, so that we can continue to live life the way we do. I mean, it's just like, for instance, with trucking, people don't think about the groceries, or if they're in the ranch, they don't think how far that hay has to come, who has to drive it, the trucks involved, all the maintenance, everything. So that whole industry has to have people that replace it, and if they're not being replaced fast enough, then things will come to a screeching halt.
Okay. And we're going to talk about careers later on, and that's a great comment, Derek. You look at things that, and I'm probably talking to the wrong group. All of you are working toward a college degree, right? But the real world says, I need truck drivers, mechanics, technicians, et cetera, as you're talking about, Derek. And I think we often, glamorize a college education. And again, I'm not pointing that against you guys, because we want you to get a college education. That's kind of why you're here. But at the same time, skilled people in all different things, whether that is the trades or the arts or whatever the case might be, is necessary. So we built a basement, finished a basement in our house in Idaho Falls when we moved up here. And to paint the basement, which I didn't have time to do, cost over $3,000. I painted in Arizona before we left. We painted about 4 rooms of our house in an afternoon with a crew of guys we found, and it cost us about $400. So where we were up here, there just was no labor, and we had to pay a large amount to get a fairly small amount of work done. So that's again a microcosm of the issue that Derek talked about, and it's an interesting thing to make happen. So let's change direction a little bit. What do we do to be effective in our hiring? So we know there's an issue. We know there's a shortage of workers. How do you hire effectively? Again, from our reading, from your experience, what would you like to do and add to that?
Sorry, I feel like I talk too much. Sorry.
No, never. Yeah, never.
Yeah, tell that to my group of guys. I think one way to do effective hiring is working with the schools, the local universities, working and gaining that relationship with them. That was something that I really got from the reading. Is I was like, oh, like have that network already connected to the up and coming, so there's already kind of a brand loyalty. I thought that was a really great recruiting method.
All right, and Derek mentioned internships a little bit earlier. Mm-hmm. And that can be another way, whether that's high school, college, whatever the case might be. Those are good. Those are good thoughts. Thank you. And by the way, Randy, don't talk too much. I promise. We love hearing from you. So, and your comments are always insightful. So, other thoughts on what we can do to make hiring work and be effective for us?
I had a couple of things that came to mind, and I know this isn't from the reading, but in one of the other classes that I took, we read the book called Good to Great. I don't know if you've heard of it, by Jim Collins. And so I always find stuff that correlates to all of my other classes from that book. And
okay. It's a classic, by the way.
I love it. I use it in a lot of stuff, in every class, frankly. But one of the things that he says is that the people come first, so that when it comes to a company, that who you get for your company matters. That's the most important thing first. The great companies care about who's on their bus, basically. If their bus is the analogy. And but he said that 3 of the disciplines that they practical disciplines for being rigorous in people decisions, he says, is when in doubt, don't hire, keep looking. So basically you're looking in your own company for the right people. And then when you know you need to make a people change, then act immediately. Don't wait around. And then
and those are such key points. Absolutely. Yeah. Go ahead, keep going, Sarah.
So, and he said, first be sure you don't simply have someone in the wrong seat. So basically going back to number 1. So if you know you need to make a people change, make sure that you're not just looking to change someone to a different position where they might work out better. And then 3 is to put your best people on your biggest opportunities, not your biggest problems. So if you sell off your problems, don't sell off your best people. And then one of the other things that he said that I really love is he said just hire from within. Start first from within. It costs you more to go outside of your company than it is to stay inside. When you have to go out to look for people, it costs you way more. And that was one of the things that I remembered from his book. But he says in here that the old adage, people are your most important asset, is wrong. People are not your most important asset. The right people are your most important asset.
Okay.
So
those are great. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
I just love this book, and there's so much more in it, but it has little tidbits for every part of business. So.
Okay, very good. Then those are great tips all for hiring, because again, they apply directly to what we're talking about. Okay, all right. Other thoughts on hiring, things to do well, things to make happen or make work well for you?
I think one thing to greatly aid in the hiring process is understanding people and understanding what goes unspoken. Just understanding, if they're fibbing to you, I don't want to call people outright liars, but if they're not telling you the truth, you need to be able to understand how to discern that, and to see those traits. I think that's one key thing in hiring to help you hire the right person.
Okay, very good. Thank you, James. Appreciate that. Other thoughts? And Hans, we appreciate your diligence here. It looks like you've been coming and going because perhaps your connection's not working so well. We appreciate you really trying to stay in there with us. So
that's exactly the case. I ended up going to my cell phone and just using my data. So that's why I've been in and out so much.
Okay, well, we appreciate your sacrifice in doing that. Thank you.
Yep.
Other thoughts on hiring? Again, those have been good ones and excellent ones. I'm sure you've got more of those. Anybody other thoughts from anybody?
Well, I was thinking also when you were talking here about good to great, and in the reading as well, it's talking about the managers and the people that are interviewing, that they need to basically be objective and not really subjective, and go about it in the right way, because if you don't have a proper assessment of the candidate and is skewed by the person interviewing, it doesn't matter how good of candidates you have, how big your pool is. It says in the reading that you're better at picking random than you are with the person that's not interviewing properly.
I love that. And basically they're saying if you flip a coin, you've got a better chance. And then that's, really what your random means, Derek. It's, hey, you know what, flip a coin. If you're a bad interviewer, you might as well just flip a coin. That type of thing. Okay. All right, I've got a couple of thoughts I'm going to share with you. And these are a little on the blunt side. I'm typing right. One is if you're doing the hiring, quit talking and start listening. So many interviews. I walk by interviews all the time where the interviewer is doing this. It's like, people, you got to shut up and let the person talk. Again, I don't know if you guys agree with that or see that a lot, is you just got to be quiet and listen. And then the other one, to go along with that, is you have to ask good questions. Tell me about your experience with this project. What did you learn on that job? Why do you think that's important? Open-ended, give you people the opportunity to talk and give them to talk about their jobs. And it's the other one that I think happens a lot, is that you have to dive deep in those discussions. Don't just, do a quick interview. Take an hour or two. A lot of times what I do, that we're actually doing this tomorrow, where I'm at in my location here, is we're taking a person on a tour of our factory, and we're going to watch them. Are they excited? And this applies in lots of industries. Are they excited? Do they ask questions? Do they want to touch things? Do they want to, you know, what's this do? What's that for? Do they want to talk to people? You know, where you're basically not doing anything. You're just taking somebody on a tour. And instead of the old, let me just tell you what we do here tour, you see what they interact on. You know, so I think you can dive deep in lots of different ways on that one. I think the other one for hiring, and this is not just for senior people. One of my favorites, if I typed it right, is multiple interviews. People put a different foot forward on a different day. You know, one of my favorites is interview on a Monday morning. You know, after when people are not at their best, get them in, hear what they have to say, and, you know, maybe just see if they're a real person or not, because anybody can be perky on a Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. If you bring in somebody Monday morning at 8, you're going to get an idea of what kind of person that is, and you get a chance to talk to them. Now, maybe that's cruel, but I don't think it is. I think it's an easy way to just kind of see who people are. But when you have people in multiple times, I think that really helps, where you just get a look at a person one time, look at a person another time. I always, if I can, sorry, my spelling is not good tonight, is when you can, especially, some people say, well, I want to do the first interview over the phone at the same time. You can't really tell over the phone what you can tell in person, and especially if it's a local person, have that first interview be face-to-face. Don't do it over the phone. Get them in, get them to talk to you, and then bring them back a second time, bring them back a third time. We do that all the time, even for entry-level jobs, and most people that want a job will do that. They think you're serious, and they come back and they say, yeah, I'm glad we had a chance to come and allow that to happen. The other one is allow for questions. My favorite thing is, what questions do you have for me? If that person says, no, I'm good, I've got nothing, you might want to drop that person like a hot potato. Again, no matter what the job, be it Derek's truck driver example or others, they ought to have some questions. You know, if it's a truck driver, what kind of trucks do you have? What's your safety record? What's this? What's that? If it's a professional, you know, tell me about your culture. I mean, whatever the case might be, people ought to ask questions. And
of course, now my computer works.
Okay. Anything else to Derek's got I have a informational interviews before, and that was helpful. Okay, that's good too. And that kind of goes along with that internship theme. So
something that actually happened to me on an interview, it was actually the second interview, where it was a kind of informational, and because again, it was creating that culture. And the gentleman that was interviewing me was like, what's your biggest pet peeve? And because I felt so comfortable and I was just talking and having conversations about books and news, I was like, stupid people. Like, that is my biggest pet peeve. But at the same time, that was a question that caught me off guard. And so they got a little more about my personality. I did get the job, okay. but that's the other thing is, like you said, with catching them on different days and different moods is a good thing. And adding somebody, like I've been in interviews with 10 people interviewing me, and then I go back in and there's only 2. So also, I think that's really good because of the culture, as well as is everybody seeing the same thing?
Okay. Whether they're together or whether they're separate, I think those multiple interviewees are very important. I've got another one that I want to add.
Hey, real quick, Brother Bonnie.
Go ahead.
So, as far as an interview goes, because you've done lots of interviews, I assume, what is a healthy amount of time to wait after a first interview, if that depends on the level of the job or whatever, from the interviewer standpoint, and what's a healthy standpoint of time to wait from? I was recently interviewed before contacting them and following up with them about that.
Okay. I would say, Hans, a few days. You know, you don't want to jump on there 5 minutes after you left and call them on your cell phone and ask if you got the job. And you don't want to wait weeks either. I think a few days is good. I think it depends on the circumstance. If you've interviewed a couple of times and it looks like it's going to be a few days before they call you back, give it 3 or 4 days. If it's something where they've called you pretty frequently and pretty quickly and all of a sudden they're not, then maybe you follow up a little bit sooner. I say just go by what feels right and go that route. So those are good thoughts. Okay. Both Derek's have some other good thoughts on there on asking good questions, etc. Very good. That's important. Another one I would add, you're recruiting. I think we have a responsibility as people that are recruiting into an organization to paint the right picture. Don't make it overly optimistic. Tell people you have problems and you've got issues and you've got concerns. I always find that very refreshing when you do. That doesn't mean you just dump on somebody of all the things that are there, but you paint a balanced, realistic picture. My take on this, I ask people that have come in afterwards and we've hired them from an interview, did the picture I paint match what you've seen here in your first month? And I've always considered it a good interview if they say, oh yeah, you're pretty accurate. You don't want to be rosy and happy and cheery and say there's nothing wrong, and you don't want to be in the depths of depression and saying, gee, why would you want to come to work here? But I think there's a balance there, and you owe it to candidates and to yourself to paint a realistic picture that really makes sense and works well. So those are all good thoughts previous to that. Other things you would add on recruiting and what to do to make those things work? This has been a good discussion.
I like Derek's comment of explain to them what the daily, day-to-day basis is. I think that's really important, especially for expectations in recruiting, because there's such a wide gap of expectation from millennials to mid-40s, you know, what they want to do and doesn't meet their expectation as a potential employee. But because I've gone in, they're like, oh, well, you'll do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm like, I'm the type of person I need a sort of like a schedule of a daily set. Like, I'm for flexibility, but if you can't figure out or explain what the job is, you need to have somebody in there that can explain the job so that person can feel comfortable in taking it as well, if that makes sense. So I like Derek's.
It does.
I'm just going off of what Derek commented on.
Okay. All right. Other thoughts from anybody else on other things that work in hiring? I would add a couple of other things on your side or our side. I think being genuine and being yourself is important. If people are going to come to work for you, you don't want them to come to work for somebody like this when you're really like that. So being genuine, being yourself is important. Sarah's got a comment that says she read an article where, is it Cy Wakeman? Thank you, said that they calculate employee value by using the equation. Okay, very good. That's good. I like that. Okay. Okay. Derek, hiring friends and family can be risky. It can also be good. It depends on how you look at it. You have to be very careful with that. Because there can very easily be an entitlement that I have a job, and it's always hard to fire your family. Okay. It's that simple, really, really simple. If you've never had to do it, I had to fire my elders quorum president once. I wasn't in the elders quorum, but I had to fire the person that was the elders quorum president in my ward. That was difficult. And 2 days after I fired him, I walk into the chapel, the same chapel he's in, and you know, I don't think he was the happiest with me. That was a tough thing. You have to be careful with that. So Derek's got a good thought. And then again, being fair with employees, not a harsh boss, extremely important. personality and company culture. Again, thank you, Derek, for that. Good indicators. Very good. Other thoughts? Somebody jumped on a mic here.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment, like, yeah, I watched a video, and I also read like some stuff that she wrote about just calculating about how to do the employee value thing, and I thought it was really interesting. I got sort of sidetracked, so I ended up watching her videos, which was weird. But anyway, I end up watching stuff because I'm looking for something else anyway. But she said that the interesting thing to me was she said that they calculate the emotional expense at 3 times the amount, because she said that, like, if you bring drama, it takes so much away from your value as an employee. If you bring any sort of drama, and they really calculate that as a big deal.
Okay.
And I was like, a lot of companies don't do that, and they really should.
Okay. Very good. Okay.
So.
And by the way, drama is not good anywhere. We all know that.
Yeah.
It's not good in marriage. It's not good in the family. It's not good in work. Drama happens anyway. But if you have somebody like James's example here, we'll use it since he's got it here for us. That fire that James has going, drama is like pouring gas on that fire. It just doesn't work, and then that can be difficult. I would say another one that this comes to mind. I believe this fully. If you have a rough interview or the interview process is difficult, if it's hard to bring somebody in, guess what? You've almost always been signing yourself up to have a hard employee. It's a little, I'm not talking about people that have genuine questions, but if it seems like a lot of work to get somebody in, or they just have a lot of demands or whatever the case might be, that can be a problem. And the kind of thing we're talking about, you know, a bad interview or a bad interview process can mean that that's a tough employee to work with. Again, a personal experience and what goes with that. Okay. Anything else to make hiring work that makes it work well for us?
I guess I want to ask a question. How much value can you put on references and the limitations that former employers are given on what they can say about a person without being afraid of legal response?
I would say a couple things, James. First of all, don't call human resources. Okay. As an HR person, don't call the HR people. If you get lucky enough to get a good one that'll actually talk to you, that's rare. Talk to their supervisor, talk to their boss. And I would ask open-ended questions and say, you know, tell me about so-and-so. What kind of employee were they? Did you have any issues? And then don't just say yes or no. What were those? You know, if you can get a hold of a boss or a supervisor or something else like that, and ask those genuine questions and get answers, they can be helpful. They're on the scale of 1 to 10. They're like 8 or 9 as far as being helpful, because people don't usually give bad references. You know, if you got fired from a job, you're not going to give that reference. You know, pure and simple. It just doesn't work. So I think they can be helpful, but they're not necessarily top of the list by any means. So, good thoughts, Derek. I'm not going to add anything to that, but that's good. Okay. Okay. Yeah, difficult tenant. That if you're difficult at the beginning, difficult at the end. I mean, that probably applies to mother-in-laws. That applies to future spouses. That applies to you know, job interviews. You name it. If somebody's difficult, they don't usually change their stripes. So good thoughts. Anything else as we go through this tonight? Brianne, I know you had something else you were going to say. I could tell in your face.
What? I don't know what you're talking about, Brother Bonnie. Okay, fine. Okay, so part of the recruitment is also using or utilizing recruiters. From an HR standpoint, is that would you cast your net out to professional recruiters? Not like a staffing, like a temp staff, but like, you know, like how utilizing those as a good tool. If that makes sense.
Only when you have to.
Okay.
If you can't find enough people, you need, basically you're trying to turn over the rocks to find somebody. And the thing that recruiters add value to, and that's a great question, is they can find people that are already employed that may not think of leaving, that aren't going to answer an ad or anything else, where you can get them to say, you get that person interested. You kind of get the hook, if you're using a fishing analogy, at least initially in the fish's mouth, I guess, if you will. And you start that process. As an HR person, you don't have time to do that most of the time. So HR people tend to do better at throwing out a big net, if you will, Indeed ads, LinkedIn, those kind of things, and see what comes up. But if you're not finding those people, a recruiter can be very helpful. They're also extremely expensive, and sometimes it's basically, they're not necessarily going to do a better job than you are. They just have the ability and the time to go make that happen. So does that make sense?
That does. Well, because I also look at different networks. You know, I mean, I do accounting, so I belong to different accounting networks. And I know that there's, you know, finance networks and there's sales networks. Would that, like, again, casting that net, utilizing those networks and posting on those job sites if you're looking for specific types?
Yes, that can work great. Okay. And those are often more effective. It's kind of either they are or they aren't, because a lot of people may say, hey, I've got a job, I'm fine, but you may also find somebody that was interested that you didn't, that wouldn't have gone looking elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Good thoughts. All right. Well, folks, if you've got any other ideas, we'd love to hear them. But if not, we're going to go ahead and call this good. I think the way I'd summarize our recruiting discussion is that the things we've written on the side over here are great techniques, things you've talked about. If you're watching the recording, I think it's important to know that it's a tough thing. In today's market, getting people to join your organization is tough. You also cannot go above and beyond. You can't be overly optimistic. You can't paint a great picture, because as we said earlier, then you get turnover that you don't want, and it's worse than having nobody in the first place. So I think a lot of the techniques you guys described, some things we talked about, can be great ways to make that work. Any final comments from anybody tonight?
I would also figure that reputation of the company that you're representing is huge, because if you're a company that most people look down on, or you have some really bad records or people or something that, you know, there's something in the news about your company, it's going to be very hard for you to obtain that talent of which you're seeking for to move your company forward. Yep, absolutely. Okay, very good thought. Okay.
Sorry,
right.
one more.
Brianne,
also, as a day-to-day employee, not necessarily in the hiring, what part does that play in the hiring process or the recruiting process? Because you're saying, like, not to paint an unrealistic picture, but can you utilize your current employees in that picture as well? And how would you use that?
I would say absolutely. And I think, you know, part of the interview process is you want other people in there, including the people that may be their peers. So I think you have them in there, you have them answer questions. They get to know each other. They may join the company because of the peer, not because of you as the HR person or the person doing the hiring. And I think those are all good ideas to do that. You have to be careful, because sometimes that can backfire a little bit. But it's it's a good way to try to make that connection with that person coming in from the outside, especially if it'd be somebody that they work with.
Okay.
So, good question. Any other final thoughts from anybody tonight? Okay. Apparently Sarah's having some of the same issues Hans had. So thank you. Sarah, you're there in two places. Thank you for the great discussion tonight. Apologize, my voice is not great, but I'm going to try to save what's left of it for some more meetings tomorrow. And I'll let you guys go. Thank you again for everything. And I think a good discussion tonight. And hopefully we even have more of these that will hopefully come forward too. So thank you for the good discussions.
Thanks, Brother Bonnie.
You bet.
Thank
you guys
you.
all have a
Safe
great
travels.
night. All right. Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
You bet. Take care.
Sorry, I had a power outage.
Really? That's never fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
unexpected power outage. Everything went dark, so.
well, hey, you're back. That must be, that's a sign of commitment on your part, Sarah.
I used my phone.
There you go.
I used my phone's hotspot, so
You know,
anyway.
there's a lot of things you can do with the phone you can't do otherwise. So all good stuff. So thank you.
Anyway, thanks.
Derek, thank you too. You guys have a great night.
You too.
Bye.